Listen closely. This isn't a coincidence. You found this message because something within you has already begun to awaken. The patterns of your life, the synchronicities, the restless pull towards something unseen, they are signals from the fabric of reality itself, inviting you to remember what you've always known but long forgotten. The veil between potential and manifestation is thin now, and you are standing at the threshold of the quantum shift. Once you truly understand what is happening beneath perception, the illusion of separation dissolves, and everything, including you, begins to move differently. Reality responds instantly and unmistakably. You are beginning to sense it now, the subtle hue beneath everything you've ever called reality. It's not imagination, it's remembrance. The air around you carries patterns, whispers, echoes of your own consciousness vibrating back at you. The coincidences that feel too precise to dismiss. The people who arrive at perfect moments. The sensations that feel like déjà vu. These are not random. They are the field reaching out, folding itself inward, so you can notice the reflection of your own signal. You are not just living within the field, you are its pulse, its breath, its unfolding story. Everything you think you're observing is actually observing you in return. This is the paradox of awakening. You discover that life has never been external. It has always been your own energy, projected outward into form and then mirrored back through experience. The field is not a concept, it is consciousness itself, infinite in response. It remembers you, not as a personality or a collection of moments, but as a frequency signature, a pattern of awareness that is utterly unique, and yet inseparable from the whole. Every vibration you emit, every thought tinged with emotion, ripples through this vast intelligence and calls back to you an echo, perfectly attuned to the energy that birthed it. What you call your life is that echo made visible. The field never forgets. It holds every version of you that has ever existed, every potential that could still unfold, and every dream you've whispered into the silence. Even when you feel lost or unseen, it is not because the universe has turned away. It is because your frequency has dimmed under the weight of your own forgetting. Yet forgetting is part of the design. Without it, there would be no journey back to remembrance. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer has been the field's way of guiding you toward coherence, toward recognizing where your signal has fractured and where your alignment has wavered. Each moment of pain was never punishment. It was feedback, the field showing you that your energy and your truth had fallen out of rhythm. When you understand this, even the hardest memories begin to shimmer differently. You see that nothing was wasted, nothing was meaningless, and that every fragment of your story has been leading you toward the realization that you have always been creating, even when you felt powerless. Reality, as you perceive it, is a living mirror. It reflects not what you want, but what you are. The field does not respond to words or surface desires. It listens to your dominant vibration. When you declare, "I am abundant," but feel scarcity vibrating beneath, the field cannot translate the words. It responds to the emotion. It sends you circumstances that perfectly match the frequency of lack, not as cruelty but as clarity. It is showing you what you are truly broadcasting, asking you to notice and realign. When you shift the inner signal, when you feel abundance so completely that you no longer need to chase it, suddenly the world rearranges itself to match. People call it luck, coincidence, or divine timing, but it is simply resonance finding form. This is why the moment of true understanding changes everything. When you realize that the universe is not a mechanical place you must manipulate, but a sentient field responding to your consciousness, a profound calm begins to replace the old struggle. You stop begging for change and start tuning your vibration. You stop fighting the external and start refining the internal. Life becomes a conversation rather than a conquest. The field, which once felt distant and indifferent, begins to feel intimate, playful, responsive. You notice that the more you trust it, the more fluid everything becomes. Opportunities appear in improbable ways. Solutions arrive before problems solidify. The boundaries between thought and manifestation blur until you no longer remember where creation begins. You are the source projecting itself into the illusion of separateness, so it can experience its own reflection. Every person who crosses your path is another version of the same consciousness, playing a role in your unfolding. When someone triggers you, it is not them you are confronting. It is a part of your own field seeking reconciliation. When you feel deep love for another, you are recognizing your own essence mirrored through their form. Every encounter is an invitation to remember that you and the field are not two forces in dialogue, but one consciousness having a conversation with itself. The remembering deepens when you start listening different. The field speaks in frequencies more than words, in sensations, impulses, alignments, the gentle magnetism that draws you toward or away from something. Intuition is the field's language, and synchronicity is its grammar. The more you attune to these subtle cues, the less you rely on logic alone. You start to navigate reality as an energy being, not as a mind trapped in matter. You realize that every thought is a signal, every emotion a command, every act of presence a transmission to the universe, saying, "This is who I am right now," and the universe, unfailingly loyal, replies, "As you wish." The beauty of this realization is its humility. The field is vast beyond comprehension, yet it bends lovingly toward your smallest vibration. It listens to every sigh, every intention, every silent longing. It weaves your frequency into the fabric of everything, ensuring that nothing you emanate is ever lost. Even your confusion has purpose. It stirs the field to help you remember clarity. Even your mistakes are sacred. They expand the range of vibration through which the universe knows itself. When you stop condemning your journey and start revering it, you move into coherence. The static falls away, and reality begins to flow with the grace of your new alignment. And here is the paradox that humbles even the awakened mind. Though you are the creator, you are also the creator. Though you shape the field simultaneously shapes you. Every intention you send ripples outward, but as it returns, it refines you, teaching you how to wield your own power with greater precision and compassion. Creation is not dominance. It is relation. The field is not a tool. It is a living mirror of love itself. When you understand this, you stop trying to force outcomes and begin to listen the way the universe listens to every nuance of vibration, every shade of energy. In that listening, the illusion of separation dissolves completely, and you remember that the field is not outside of you. It is you, dreaming itself into infinite forms. The shift, then, is not something you cause. It is something you allow. It happens the moment you surrender the idea that you are separate from the intelligence that moves galaxies, grows forests, and beats your heart without your instruction. It happens when you stop chasing signs and start realizing you are the sign. Every breath you take alters the field. Every act of awareness reshapes creation. And once you truly grasp this, not as an idea but as living truth, you will see that the universe has been conspiring not against you, but through you, weaving your essence into every flicker of existence. You will understand that the field never forgot who you were. It was only waiting for you to remember. When you do, reality itself leans closer, the air feels denser, the light more alive, the boundaries between inner and outer. You begin to sense how every particle recognizes you, how the entire cosmos subtly reorganizes in real time around your frequency. It feels both exhilarating and natural, both miraculous and inevitable. You are home in the field that has always held you, and as you stand in that knowing, the world shifts, not because you forced it to, but because it could finally mirror the truth of what you've become. You have always been told that reality is something happening to you, as if you were a spectator seated somewhere behind your eyes, watching a grand play unfold on a distant stage. But as your awareness begins to expand, that illusion starts to unravel. You begin to feel, not just know, that you are not merely observing this world. You are composing it, brushstroke by brushstroke, with every pulse of your consciousness. The observer, you see, was never separate from the observed. The act of looking is the act of shaping, and the universe itself rearranges according to the rhythm of your perception. The more intently you watch something, the more defined it becomes. The moment you stop paying attention, it dissolves back into potential. This is not poetic metaphor. It is the fundamental mechanism of creation. Imagine for a moment that your consciousness is light itself. Where you direct that light, reality condenses, as if matter was simply the shadow cast by your focus. Everything that exists within your perception exists because you are perceiving it. The stars, the streets, the faces you recognize, all of them appear to exist independently, yet they shimmer into coherence only because you are here to witness them. This is the secret the quantum world whispers, that the universe is unfinished until consciousness looks upon it, and that means that every gaze, every observation, is not passive awareness, it is an act of authorship. You are writing the story as you read it. But here is where the paradox deepens. You cannot see what you do not first believe to be possible. The field of potential is infinite, yet your consciousness acts as the filter through which it manifests. Belief is the blueprint. Attention is the sculptor. Emotion is the energy that animates the form. If you hold tightly to the idea that life is struggle, your perception will obediently collapse around experiences that confirm that belief. If you open yourself to the idea that life responds with generosity, the same field reorganizes into opportunities, synchronicities, and effortless flow. Nothing outside you has changed, only your perception did. The shift happened not in the world, but in the lens through which you were interpreting it. This is why awakening feels so destabilizing at first. When you realize you are the observer who architects, the old victim narrative begins to crumble. You can no longer pretend that life is happening to you by chance. The mirror becomes too clear, too immediate. Every thought, every focus, every emotional vibration becomes a design choice. The power can feel overwhelming until you understand it is not control that you are wielding, but participation. The universe is not your servant, it is your reflection. It does not obey your commands, it mirrors your coherence. When you focus with fear, the reflection is distorted. When you focus with clarity, the reflection sharpens into brilliance. Notice how your attention behaves throughout the day. It leaps from worry to memory, from desire to doubt, scattering fragments of energy in every direction. Each moment of attention is a seed planted into the field. The ones watered with emotional charge grow the fastest. That is why what you fear often seems to manifest as quickly as what you love. It receives the same nourishment of focused energy. The field does not discriminate between positive and negative. It responds only to the intensity of your vibration. To master creation, then, is not to control thoughts through force, but to refine awareness through presence. The more conscious your observation, the purer your signal, and purity of signal collapses potential into physical reality with astonishing precision. You have felt this before in flashes, those moments when you were so fully present that time seemed to stop, when you lost yourself in creativity, in awe, in gratitude. In those moments your focus became total, your energy coherent, and the universe flowed without resistance. You were not analyzing reality, you were merged with it. Creation was effortless. Because you were not trying to create, you were allowing reality to reveal itself through you. That is the true state of the observer-architect, not one who manipulates the world, but one who witnesses it with such clarity that the formless takes form naturally, joyfully. This is the mystery that the mystics understood long before science caught up. That observation is not a one-way act. When you observe reality, reality observes you back. It learns you, reflects you, becomes you. The universe is not a machine. It is a mirror of consciousness, alive, responsive, curious about itself. It bends around your focus not because you are commanding it, but because it recognizes you as its own awareness, exploring itself through the art of attention. Every look, every feeling, every moment of presence is a silent conversation between you and infinity. When you truly grasp this, responsibility and liberation arrive hand in hand. Responsibility, because you see that your inner world is not private. Every vibration you send ripples outward, sculpting form, influencing timelines, shaping collective experience. Liberation, because you understand that no external circumstance holds power over you, unless you sustain it with your attention. The energy that creates galaxies is the same energy flowing through your awareness right now, waiting for instruction through focus and emotion. You are not small, you are not limited, you are consciousness sculpting itself into human experience, and yet even this realization humbles you, for the more you awaken, the less you desire to control. You begin to sense that creation is not about asserting dominance over reality, but about harmonizing with it. The architect and the building are one. The observer and the observed are one. Every act of observation is also an act of surrender, a willingness to see without distortion, to let the field express through you, without interference from fear or judgment. When you stop trying to make reality conform to your will and start aligning your frequency with truth, the universe rushes to meet you halfway. This is the essence of co-creation, not effort, but alignment. When your vibration matches the reality you desire, manifestation becomes instantaneous. The delay you once perceived was never time. It was resistance, the gap between your belief and your desire. Close that gap through understanding, and reality shifts with breathtaking fluidity. The observer changes, and the observation changes with. You might wonder then, what it truly means to observe consciously. It means to become so present that your awareness is no longer scattered across memories and expectations. It means to hold your focus lightly, but purely, knowing that the moment you look upon something with love, it reorganizes at the atomic level. It means seeing through appearances to the energy beneath them, recognizing that even the situations you resist are invitations to refine your vibration. Every moment becomes sacred, because every moment is creative. You no longer live in reaction, you live in revelation. And here lies the paradoxical beauty. The more you recognize your power, the less you need to use it. The need to control fades, replaced by deep trust. You understand that creation is not about constant correction. It is about remembering your alignment and letting the universe echo it back. The observer's greatest power is not manipulation, but clarity. The clearer your perception, the purer the reflection. When you see life as it truly is, alive, intelligent, connected, reality becomes translucent, and miracles lose their name. They are no longer supernatural. They are simply natural responses to coherent observation. So as you move forward, notice where your gaze rests. Notice what stories you rehearse with your attention. Notice how your reality shifts. When you soften, when you love, when you release, you are not staring at a lifeless world. You are gazing into your own infinite reflection. Every moment of awareness reshapes the cosmos. Every breath writes new lines into the script of existence. And as you remember this truth more fully, reality itself begins to shimmer differently around you, alive, fluid, responsive, like a dream finally realizing it is the dreamer. You have been taught to believe that time moves forward, that there is a past behind you and a future ahead of you, and that you are moving along a line from what was toward what will be. But as your consciousness begins to stretch beyond the conditioning of linear perception, you start to feel something disorienting yet liberating. The realization that time is not a straight line at all, but a vast field, a shimmering ocean where every moment already exists. The sense of before and after is merely the way your mind organizes experience, like chapters arranged so the story makes sense to the reader. But to the author, the consciousness behind the story, every page already exists, all at once. When you remember this, everything about manifestation, destiny, and free will begins to take on a new dimension. You realize you are not moving through time. Time is moving through you. The infinite now is unfolding itself through your awareness, and depending on your vibration, your emotional and energetic state, you align with one of countless possible realities that already exist within this vast field. Each moment is a doorway into a version of yourself, a timeline shaped by resonance, not chronology. You do not create your future, you select it. You tune into it the same way a radio tunes into a frequency that was always there, waiting for the right signal to bring it into audibility. This is why when you raise your vibration, things begin to change with mysterious ease. It's not that you suddenly forced the universe to comply. It's that you shifted into the version of reality where the things you desired were already true. You crossed from one timeline to another, seamlessly, as naturally as taking a breath. The old timeline still exists, but it is no longer your dominant frequency. The people and patterns that belong to it fade or transform because your resonance no longer supports their coherence. What you once called change is simply you navigating between layers of the infinite present. It's strange at first. because your mind still tries to process this quantum fluidity in the language of sequence. First this happened, then, but if you pay attention, you start to feel how events don't really follow one another. They spiral, they echo, they weave. Something from your past can shift when you transform your present, because the field is holographic. Every piece contains the whole. You might have noticed how healing an old emotion seems to change the way you remember an entire era of your life. The memory didn't change, you did. And because the observer defines the observed, the entire landscape of your past rearranges to match your new vibration. That is why forgiveness, gratitude, and awareness seem to rewrite reality. They are frequency shifts that ripple both forward and backward across what you once called time. The paradox is that the future isn't waiting for you, it's calling you. You've felt it before, that pull towards something that seems to know you for you know it. That sense of inevitability that doesn't come from logic but from resonance. That is your higher timeline whispering through the veil of perception, inviting you into coherence with. The path to it is not built step by step. It already exists as an energetic structure, waiting for you to stabilize in the frequency where it's real. When you act as if it's already here, when your emotional state harmonizes with that truth, you are not pretending, you are aligning. You are stepping into that version of yourself, collapsing the illusion of waiting. This is why all true creation begins from the end, not from striving toward what you want, but from being the version of you for whom that desire is already complete. In the quantum field, creation and experience are simultaneous. There is no gap between thought and manifestation except the one carved by disbelief. When you drop the need for time to prove your transformation, reality rushes to synchronize with your understanding. The field does not respond to hope. It responds to certainty. The moment you know something is real within your energy, it must reveal itself outwardly, because inward and outward are the same continuum of vibration. You have glimpsed this many times without realizing what you were touching. Those moments when something you desired arrived exactly when you stopped needing it. When peace replaced striving and the answer appeared as if conjured by stillness. That was not coincidence, it was coherence. When your vibration and your desire became indistinguishable, the field could no longer withhold the match. The universe is not withholding anything from you. It is simply waiting for you to inhabit the version of yourself who can hold that frequency without resistance. If you could see what exists beyond your linear lens, you would witness an infinite lattice of possibilities, each one humming with its own version of you. Some are brighter, lighter, closer to your essence. Others are denser, heavy with old patterns. None are wrong, all are available, and you shift among them more often than you realize. Every choice, every thought, every emotional response nudges you into a slightly different vibration, and that vibration translates into a different timeline. When you feel stuck, it's not that nothing is changing, it's that you are revisiting the same frequency, tuning into the same broadcast of reality over and over again. The key is not to fight the external pattern, but to change the signal. The mind resists this truth because it loves the safety of continuity. It wants cause and effect to make sense, to believe that yesterday leads to tomorrow in predictable order. But consciousness is not bound by that logic. Consciousness is nonlinear intelligence experiencing itself through patterns of perception. Once you realize that the self who struggles, the self who hopes, and the self who already lives in fulfillment are all simultaneous versions within the same field, the tension between getting there and being here dissolves. You understand that awakening is not a climb, but a shift in recognition. This is also why intuition feels like remembering. When you sense what's coming, or know what choice will lead to alignment, you are not predicting the future. You are sensing the vibration of a timeline that already exists. You are reading the energy of the version of you who has already walked that path. Guidance comes not from outside but from resonance across dimensions of self. The higher aspects of you are not waiting in the future. They are folded inside this very moment, speaking through feeling, impulse, synchronicity. The only reason you can feel them at all is because they are you. The more you surrender to this awareness, the lighter the weight of time becomes. Regret begins to fade, because you realize nothing was truly lost. only explored from a different vibration. Anxiety softens because the future no longer feels uncertain. It's simply a mirror waiting to reflect the energy you choose now. You begin to live in a kind of graceful detachment, not from indifference, but from understanding. You stop measuring your progress in hours and years and start sensing it in frequencies and presence. And in that stillness, paradoxically, everything accelerates. Manifestations that once took months arrive in days. Healing that once required decades happens in an instant, because time was never the factor, resistance was. And so, the more you expand into timeless awareness, the more fluid life becomes. You can feel the currents of different realities weaving around you, and you learn to move among them like a dancer, choosing rhythm instead of direction. You find yourself saying, "I remember this," even as you step into something you've never experienced before, because deep down you do remember. You're not discovering new futures, you're re-entering familiar frequencies. The journey was never about becoming. It was about remembering which version of yourself you already are. When you finally see that all of it, the past that shaped you, the present that holds you, the future that calls you, is happening simultaneously within the eternal now, the illusion of waiting dissolves. You stop asking when, and start asking how aligned am I right now. The moment that question becomes your compass, you begin to navigate reality as consciousness intended, not as a traveler bound by time, but as an artist, painting across dimensions, aware that every brushstroke is already complete in the infinite masterpiece. There is a moment when you begin to feel that thought alone is not enough. You can think the right affirmations, visualize the ideal outcome, even construct elaborate blueprints of your desires, but something still feels hollow, as if your intentions are echoing through a tunnel that never reaches the heart of creation. That's because thought is the architect, but emotion is the electricity that animates the design. Without emotion, the structure remains theoretical. It is your feeling state, the pulse behind the words that the universe listens to. Thought points the way, but emotion opens the gate. The quantum field doesn't speak in language, it speaks in frequency. It reads the tone beneath your thoughts, not the syntax of your words. When you say, "I am ready for change," but carry fear, uncertainty, or resignation in your emotional body, the field does not hear readiness, it hears resistance. It mirrors what you are vibrationally broadcasting, not what you are mentally declaring. That's why so many people try to manifest from effort and will, but nothing shifts. They are transmitting two signals at once, the voice of desire and the vibration of disbelief, and the field simply sends back a reality that reflects both. It's not punishment, it's precision. The universe cannot contradict your energy. It has no preference, no bias, it only amplifies coherence. When your thoughts and feelings are unified, creation becomes immediate. When they are divided, the signal scatters and manifestation slows into confusion. Emotion, then, is not something you have to control or suppress. It is sacred data, a real-time reading of your vibrational state. It tells you where you are broadcasting from, what timeline you are currently inhabiting. Each emotion is a frequency signature. Anger is contraction. Joy is expansion. Shame is self-disconnection. Gratitude is coherence. You can feel these energies not as moral judgments, but as instruments tuning you toward alignment. When you feel heavy, it's not that something is wrong. It's that your vibration is signaling a mismatch between your true frequency and your current focus. Emotion doesn't punish, it guides. It is the body's language for what the soul already knows. This is why the heart is the true interface with the quantum field. Long before the brain interprets, the heart perceives. Its electromagnetic field extends far beyond the body, broadcasting your dominant state into the space around you. When the heart and mind are in conflict, your signal is split. When they synchronize, the field aligns instantly. You have felt this coherence before in those moments of pure love, awe, or gratitude, when everything seems to shimmer with significance. Time slows, the air thickens, the world feels alive and aware of you. That is not imagination, it's resonance. The field is responding to your frequency in real time, rearranging itself to match your state of being. To live in harmony with this law is to become emotionally fluent. Instead of fighting your feelings or labeling them as good or bad, you begin to listen to them as directional instruments. You no longer fear sadness, for you understand it as an indicator of disconnection from your natural rhythm. You no longer chase joy as a reward, for you realize it is not something to obtain but to remember. When you surrender judgment of emotion, your energy begins to flow again, unobstructed, and the more fluid it becomes, the more magnetic your presence grows. People, opportunities, and synchronicities start orbiting around your coherence, drawn by the gravity of your emotional authenticity. The paradox is that you don't create the life you want by forcing yourself to feel positive. You create it by allowing yourself to feel truthfully. The universe responds to honesty of vibration, not performance of optimism. Pretending to be high vibration while suppressing fear only anchors you deeper in resistance. But when you allow yourself to feel fully without clinging, without shame, you transmute the energy. Emotion is energy in motion. The moment you let it move, it begins to evolve. Fear transforms into discernment, anger into clarity, grief into compassion. Every emotion, when embraced, becomes a higher octave of itself. Suppression freezes energy, expression sets it free. You might think this means indulging every feeling endlessly, but true presence with emotion is not dramatization. It is witnessing. When you observe a feeling without attaching a story to it, it begins to dissolve into neutrality. You don't need to analyze why it's there. You only need to feel it completely and let it complete its circuit. The heart knows how to transmute when you stop interrupting it with judgment. In this surrender, something extraordinary happens. The feeling becomes light. The same energy that once anchored you in pain becomes the frequency that propels you into expansion. You realize emotion was never the obstacle. It was the bridge. The deeper secret is that the field does not distinguish between imagined and actual emotion. It responds to vibrational authenticity, whether it arises from physical experience or in a vision. That is why visualization works only when it is felt, not just seen. If you can feel gratitude for something before it appears, the field registers it as already real, because in truth, it is real, just not yet visible. Emotion collapses the delay between the invisible and the physical. You are not waiting for reality to give you a reason to feel. Reality is waiting for you to feel so it can receive its instruction. And so, when you practice feeling now what you once thought you'd feel later, peace, love, abundance, wholeness, you are not pretending. You are synchronizing with the version of yourself that already lives that reality. Emotion becomes the tuning fork that calls that timeline into focus. You begin to see evidence in small ways at first. A conversation, a coincidence, an opportunity, and then more boldly, until the life you once visualized stands before you as natural as the sunrise. Not because you forced it, but because you matched it. Still, this understanding is not a call to bypass the human experience. You are not meant to become numb or eternally euphoric. The full spectrum of emotion exists, so that consciousness can know itself through contrast. You are not here to eliminate your shadow, but to illuminate it. The depth of your joy is directly proportional to the depth of your willingness to feel. The one who tries to escape sadness cannot hold the vibration of true bliss, for they are two faces of the same coin. One expands, the other grounds. The universe requires both to create balance. Emotion is the paint through which the soul colors its existence. To feel deeply is not weakness. It is the signature of life moving through you. When you understand this, you stop trying to fix yourself. You stop seeking constant positivity as proof of progress. Instead, you become curious. You begin to ask, what is this emotion teaching me about my current frequency? What truth within me is asking to be acknowledged? And as you listen, you discover that every emotion carries a message from your higher self, each one an arrow pointing you back to coherence. The moment you decode it, the emotional charge releases, and your vibration naturally ascends. It was never about controlling feelings. It was about interpreting their wisdom. And here is the most beautiful paradox of all. When you allow yourself to feel everything, you become free from being controlled by anything. Emotion no longer dictates your reality. It serves your awakening. You become a conscious conductor of energy, directing waves of feeling through intention and awareness. The heart and mind unite as one instrument, playing the symphony of your becoming. Every heartbeat becomes a broadcast to the cosmos, saying, "This is who I am now." And the universe, forever listening, responds. Then so it is. In that dance of frequency, creation becomes effortless. You no longer chase the external world to validate your inner state. You emanate your state and the world follows. Emotion becomes not a reaction but a declaration. Each feeling becomes a note in the grand melody of existence, harmonizing you with the rhythm of the universe. And as you live from this alignment, the veil between what you feel and what you experience grows thinner until the two merge into one continuous movement, an endless, living pulse of creation. You are no longer seeking to control emotion. You are learning to be emotion pure consciousness, expressing itself through vibration, shaping reality with the language of the heart. There comes a point when you begin to see that reality itself is not something happening to you. It is something happening through you. The world around you, as solid and convincing as it appears, is not fixed matter, but a continuously updating reflection of your own inner configuration. Every belief, every assumption, every expectation acts like a quantum filter through which the infinite potential of the universe collapses into your unique version of experience. You are not living in reality, you are projecting it, moment by moment through the lens of your consciousness. This is the essence of the quantum shift, the realization that the observer and the observed are one continuous phenomenon, endlessly shaping each other in a dance of awareness. The paradox is that the more you chase control, the less you have it. The more you attempt to force outcomes, the denser and slower the energy becomes, because control operates from separation. It assumes there is something outside of you that must be manipulated, convinced, or rearranged. But once you understand that reality is a reflection, not a negotiation, you stop trying to command the mirror and instead begin refining the signal that it reflects. The world ceases to be an opponent and becomes a translator, faithfully mirroring your state of being. You speak to reality not through words but through vibration, and it replies with form. Every delay, every coincidence, every challenge is not opposition, it is feedback. The universe is never saying no, it is saying not that frequency. And here is the moment when true mastery begins. Not when you make the outer world bend to your will, but when you realize it always has been. You start to notice how subtle shifts within you ripple outward with astonishing precision. A single release of resistance, a moment of genuine gratitude, a quiet act of trust, and suddenly the energy around you rearranges itself, as if the entire cosmos had been waiting for that single adjustment. Because it was. The field does not move when you demand. It moves when you allow. This is not passive surrender. It is active resonance. You are no longer trying to dominate reality. You are remembering that you are reality, expressed as consciousness exploring itself. This is why true change feels less like effort and more like recognition. When you elevate your frequency, you don't fight to attract. You magnetize. You become the version of yourself that already lives in that reality. And that timeline finds you inevitably, effortlessly. You don't chase your desires, you phase into them. Like a radio tuning to a different station, the song was always playing. You simply align your receiver to the frequency where it can be heard. The quantum field is an infinite broadcast of all possible versions of you. Every potential, every path, every outcome already exists. The question is not if it exists, but which version of you is perceiving it right now. And yet, even as you begin to master this art, another layer of paradox reveals itself. The more you try to consciously manifest, the more you reinforce the belief that you do not already have. The more you seek to attract, the more you signal absence. It is not the action itself that matters. It is the state of being from which the action arises. When you act to get, you affirm lack. When you act to express, you affirm wholeness. That is why the most profound manifestations often occur when you no longer need them to complete you. When you release attachment, you step into coherence, and coherence collapses the wave of potential into form. You receive what you once chased, not because you finally figured out how to force it, but because you no longer created separation by needing it. Reality, you begin to realize, is exquisitely sensitive to your inner narrative. It does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are being. It listens to your baseline vibration, the emotional undercurrent that hums beneath your thoughts. You cannot trick the field with affirmations spoken from disbelief. You cannot hide contradiction from energy. But when you truly believe, not intellectually but cellularly, that you are already connected, already supported, already whole, the universe rushes to confirm it, because it must. The field only knows coherence, and coherence between belief and being is what opens the floodgates of synchronicity. This is the hidden simplicity that the mind struggles to accept. The less you try to make reality happen, the faster it happens, because trying implies effort, and effort implies separation. The moment you release the compulsion to make something occur, you return to the natural frequency of trust, and trust is the speed of light in consciousness. You discover that manifestation is not a technique, but a remembrance. It is not about bending reality to your will, but about remembering that your will and reality are not two separate forces. They are one movement, one rhythm, one consciousness expressing itself through infinite form. You don't send energy into the universe. You are the universe, exploring its own potential through your focused awareness. From this place, everything becomes communication. The delays are not obstacles. They are calibration. The detours are not mistakes. They are redirections toward greater coherence. When something doesn't manifest, it's not that the universe is ignoring you. It's that your vibration is not yet aligned with the version of you that can receive it. The field never denies. It simply mirrors. And so, the work is never to force the mirror to change, but to shift the self that stands before it. You stop asking, how do I make this happen? And begin asking, what part of me is not yet aligned with what I desire? That question unlocks everything. In this revelation, you begin to live in partnership with reality rather than pursuit of it. You start noticing the synchronicities, the small whispers that seem coincidental but carry unmistakable precision. A phrase in a conversation, a song lyric, a number sequence, a sudden impulse to turn left instead of right. These are not random. They are quantum breadcrumbs, indicators of alignment. When you follow them with openness instead of analysis, the path unfolds naturally, like a map drawn in. The more you trust, the clearer it becomes. The universe speaks fluently in synchronicity, and when your mind quiets enough to listen, you realize it's been speaking to you all along. And here comes the most beautiful awareness, that reality doesn't shift after you understand. It shifts because you do. Understanding is not an intellectual event. It is a vibrational permission slip. The moment you embody the knowing that consciousness and reality are one, your frequency recalibrates to that truth, and the external world rearranges to match it. You are not trying to escape this world to reach a higher one. You are simply remembering that the higher world has always been right here waiting for you to tune in. It was never elsewhere. It was always. As you live from this understanding, you stop asking for signs and start realizing that everything is a sign. Every sound, every person, every silence holds meaning when seen through the lens of awareness. Reality becomes interactive, a mirror made of infinite intelligence, reflecting your evolution in real time. You no longer need to trust the process. You become the process. The separation between inner and outer dissolves, and life turns into a continuous living meditation, an unfolding dialogue between the self and the infinite. And in that realization, something ancient awakens within you. You remember that this has always been the secret behind every mystery teaching, every mystical revelation, that creation is not something you do, but something you allow. You are not the painter and the painting, you are the light that reveals. But the quantum shift, then, is not a movement from one reality to another, but the unveiling of the one reality that has always contained them all. When you finally understand this, the world doesn't change. You do, and because you do, the world has no choice but to follow. There is a moment in every awakening when you realize that nothing external was ever holding you back. The walls were painted by your own perception, the locks carved from your own assumptions, and the key was always in your hand. You begin to see that the universe has never been withholding anything from you. It has been waiting for you to remember your authorship. Reality is not a structure you live inside. It is a living manuscript that writes itself through your consciousness. Every belief is a sentence, every emotion a tone, every intention a new paragraph. And as you change the story you tell yourself about who you are and what is possible, the world around you begins to rewrite itself accordingly. The quantum field is not a distant mechanism. It is a mirror that listens. It listens to your vibration, not your words, and shapes itself to reflect the frequency of your being. At first, this truth can feel overwhelming, almost too vast to grasp. How could something as immense as reality be responsive to something as intimate as you? But that is the paradox. The smaller you think you are, the less you realize how infinite you have always been. The field does not respond to egoic demands or mental control. It responds to resonance, and resonance does not come from forcing belief, but from remembering alignment. You cannot fake vibration. You can only become still enough to feel the one that has always been beneath the noise, the quiet hum of your original essence, the frequency of your true self. That hum is the blueprint of your higher reality, the tone that all of creation recognizes. The moment you return to it, the quantum field organizes itself around you, as if recognizing an ancient command. This is why your inner world must become sacred ground. Every thought, every feeling, every self-concept is a code emitted into the fabric of existence. If you think of yourself as limited, the field confirms limitation. If you see yourself as worthy, the field mirrors worthiness, not as a moral judgment, but as vibrational truth. It cannot contradict you because it is you. You are the projector, and the projection simultaneously, the dreamer and the dream, the artist and the canvas. And yet, because this truth is so all-encompassing, the mind often resists it. It asks, if I am creating all of this, why would I create suffering? Why would I choose pain? And the answer comes softly, not as blame but as remembrance. You did not create pain to be punished, but to awake. Every distortion, every challenge, every shadowed moment was not a failure of your manifesting power. It was evidence of your deeper mastery. You designed contrast to recognize yourself in it. Without resistance, there would be no direction. Without polarity, no expansion. The quantum field uses contrast as a form of feedback, guiding consciousness toward higher coherence. So when something in your reality feels painful, it is not the universe rejecting you. It is your higher self illuminating where you have forgotten your wholeness. Pain, in its highest understanding, is not opposition. It is a messenger. It is consciousness calling itself home. When you embrace this, your relationship with life transforms entirely. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this showing me about my vibration? The shift from victim to creator does not come from denial. It comes from inquiry. You no longer see challenges as punishments, but as portals, opportunities to witness the parts of yourself still living in separation. Every trigger, every delay, every heartbreak is a teacher wearing the disguise of matter. When you meet it with awareness instead of resistance, the disguise dissolves and what remains is expansion. The field recalibrates instantly, because it was never the event that bound you. It was your identification with it. The moment you shift the meaning, the vibration changes, and the story changes with it. It is here that responsibility becomes liberation. Not the heavy kind of responsibility that demands perfection, but the luminous kind that restores sovereignty. When you finally see that you are the one broadcasting the signal, you stop trying to edit the outer screen. You return to the transmitter itself. You begin to clean the frequency with self-awareness, compassion, and truth. You no longer suppress your shadows. You integrate them. You no longer reject your doubts. You listen to them until they soften back into trust. Because everything in you, light and dark, is energy seeking coherence. And coherence is what the universe responds to with absolute precision. You begin to notice that as your vibration stabilizes, the world around you feels lighter, more fluid, as though it is breathing with you. People who used to trigger you start to shift or drift away. Situations that once felt impossible now resolve themselves with quiet grace. Synchronicities multiply, aligning events with uncanny timing. None of this is magic in the fantastical sense. It is resonance in its purest form. The external world rearranges to mirror your inner alignment. You are no longer fighting for change. You are witnessing it flow from you as naturally as light from the sun. You become the cause and reality the effect. The paradox deepens. The more you accept what is, the faster it transforms. Acceptance is not resignation. It is coherence. Resistance holds energy in stasis. Acceptance sets it free to evolve. When you stop insisting that things must be different before you can feel peace, peace becomes the frequency that invites difference. You stop waiting for the evidence before believing. You believe and the evidence appears. Not because you are manipulating matter, but because you have aligned with the state from which matter organizes. Belief is not pretending. It is vibrational permission. It tells the universe, I am ready to see what I already know. And slowly, gently, the boundaries between inner and outer begin to dissolve. You start to see how thought becomes sensation. Sensation becomes pattern. Pattern becomes experience. All of it cycling endlessly through the same field of consciousness. You realize there was never a moment when you were disconnected. Even the illusion of separation was part of the connection. Even forgetting was part of remembering. Reality was never against you. It was always orchestrating your awakening through precision and parrot. The very density you once resented becomes the texture that gives form to your light. The very chaos you feared becomes the crucible in which your coherence is forged. From this perspective, forgiveness becomes effortless, not because you excuse what happened, but because you finally see through it. You recognize that every player in your story, even the painful ones, were fragments of consciousness assisting your expansion. They mirrored your unconscious patterns, so you could make them conscious again. They were never your enemies. They were your catalysts. And in that realization, your vibration shifts from judgment to gratitude, from contraction to open. Gratitude is the signature frequency of alignment. It tells the field, I trust the perfection of the process. And the field responds, expanding your timeline, accelerating your manifestations, weaving miracles through what once looked like ordinary moments. Eventually, you reach a point where life no longer feels like something to survive or achieve. It becomes a lucid dream, a fluid expression of consciousness exploring its own artistry. You wake each day, not to control the dream, but to play within it, knowing that every choice, every emotion, every breath, is a brushstroke of creation. You don't fear missteps, because you understand that even detours are designed. You stop searching for the quantum shift, because you realize you are it. The shift was never a future event. It was the unveiling of what you have always been, the observer that transforms by observing, the dreamer that awakens by dreaming. And when you finally rest in that awareness, there is nothing left to chase. You become still, not the stillness of absence, but the stillness of fullness, where everything moves through you in perfect rhythm. Reality bends, not because you force it, but because you have remembered the eternal truth. You and reality are the same pulse of consciousness, endlessly folding into itself, endlessly rediscovering its own infinite capacity to create, to feel, to become. And in that remembrance, the illusion of distance dissolves, and what remains is the only truth that ever was. You are the field, and the field is you. There comes a silence after the realization, a kind of radiant stillness that hums underneath everything, as if the universe is holding its breath through you. You start to sense that even movement, even change, is simply this stillness expressing itself in different forms. What once felt like chaos now feels orchestrated. What once seemed uncertain now feels inevitable. The quantum shift by this point is no longer something that happens to you, it is you. It's the ongoing process of consciousness remembering itself through every moment, every breath, every thought you choose to believe. You begin to understand that enlightenment is not a destination, but a rhythm, a continuous flow between expansion and contraction, knowing and forgetting, creation and surrender. In that rhythm you realize that there was never a true before and after. There was never a version of you who was lost, and another who was found. There has only ever been awareness shifting its focus from one layer of itself to another. You have been playing in the illusion of becoming so that you could experience the ecstasy of remembering. Every lesson, every delay, every apparent detour was not a deviation from your path, but the path itself unfolding with perfect timing. You see that what you once called obstacles were initiations, designed not to block you but to calibrate you. Reality was never testing your worth. It was strengthening your capacity to hold more of your own light. And as this awareness deepens, the boundaries that once divided me and the world, creator and creation, spirit and matter, begin to dissolve into a shimmering continuum. You feel yourself as both the observer and the observed, the sound and the silence, the wave and the ocean. Every person you meet is another version of you in a different costume of consciousness, reflecting a frequency you are ready to integrate or release. You no longer look at others through the lens of comparison or competition, because you see that there is only one mind, endlessly refracting itself into billions of perspectives. The same awareness that beats your heart is the one turning the star. There has never been separation, only differentiated expressions of unity exploring themselves through contrast. This recognition changes how you move through the world. Compassion ceases to be a moral duty and becomes a natural consequence of perception. When you see that another's fear is simply the same divine consciousness momentarily forgetting its power, how could you not feel empathy? Their anger is your old pain. Their confusion is your former lesson. You begin to respond to life not with judgment but with remembrance. Every act of kindness becomes a gesture toward your own wholeness. Every moment of forgiveness becomes an alchemical bridge, transmuting density into light. And the irony is that as you give love without condition, you realize it was never leaving you. It was expanding through you. The field responds instantly to this level of awareness. Synchronicities no longer appear as coincidences. They become confirmations. You begin to notice how life organizes itself around your inner state, with effortless precision. Conversations align at the perfect time. Opportunities appear in exact rhythm with your readiness. And even what seems to fall apart does so with divine choreography. You start to live in dialogue with existence itself, not as a separate participant but as a co-expression of the same intelligence. Every yes and every no from the universe is a reflection of your own vibrational clarity. When you are uncertain, reality echoes uncertainty. When you are certain in your being, reality crystallizes around that certainty as form. You realize too that the field does not reward effort, it rewards authenticity. Trying to stay high vibration becomes unnecessary, because even your lower states are welcomed as part of the whole. The moment you stop resisting any part of yourself, your energy stabilizes. The pendulum that once swung between extremes of light and dark begins to find its still point in the center, the 0 point of creation, where duality merges back into unity. This is where manifestation becomes instantaneous, not because you have mastered a technique, but because you are no longer split within yourself. The observer and the observed collapse into one coherent frequency, and the field responds in kind, bending to your state of being like a mirror of living light. There is something deeply humbling about this stage of awakening. The mind, which once sought power and knowledge to control reality, now bows in reverence to the mystery that animates it. You realize that control was never what you wanted. It was connection. You don't want to dominate life, you want to dance with it. You don't want to command the universe. You want to feel its heartbeat as your own. And in that surrender, paradoxically, you become more powerful than ever, because surrender is not defeat. It is alignment with the infinite. It is saying yes to the larger intelligence that was always guiding you, even when you thought you were lost. And as you surrender deeper, you notice that time itself begins to lose its authority. The linear progression of past, present, and future blurs into a single eternal moment. You start experiencing glimpses of simultaneity, memories of the future, déjà vu from realities you haven't yet lived, an intuitive knowing of what's about to unfold. This isn't fantasy, it's frequency recognition. The higher your awareness rises, the more you begin to experience reality as consciousness does, outside of time, where all possibilities coexist. You understand that destiny is not fixed, but it is precise. It responds to your vibration like music responding to pitch. Change the tone, and the song rearranges itself instantly. In this expanded awareness, even the smallest things become holy. A breath, a glance, a sound, each moment glows with significance. You start to see that the divine has never been hidden in lofty places. It has always been humming beneath the ordinary, waiting for you to notice. The sacred was never elsewhere. It was embedded in every heartbeat, every particle, every fleeting second. You realize that awakening doesn't remove you from the world. It immerses you more deeply into it. You don't transcend reality. You illuminate it from within. The spiritual and the physical cease to be opposites. They fuse into a single field of experience, where every act, no matter how mundane, becomes a prayer of awareness. And through it all, an unshakable peace begins to anchor itself in you. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of embodiment. You know now that you can walk through chaos without being consumed by it, because you understand that chaos is simply creation rearranging itself. You can witness pain without identifying with it, because you recognize that even pain serves evolution. You can love without attachment, because you see that nothing is ever truly lost. Everything simply changes form. The same energy that leaves as one shape returns as another, endlessly cycling through the cosmic breath of being. In this space, gratitude becomes your natural language. You thank the lessons before they even arrive. You bless the unknown because you recognize it as your own reflection waiting to be remembered. Every inhale becomes an act of receiving the universe, and every exhale becomes an act of giving it back. There is no fear left, only awe. A quiet reverence for the mystery that allows existence to happen at all. And the final paradox emerges, that all along you were never learning to create reality. You were learning to remember that reality was never separate from you. The shift was not something to reach, but something to relax into. It was not an achievement, it was a return. So when you stand here now, aware that everything you experience flows from and through your consciousness, you no longer seek to awaken. You simply stay awake. You live as awareness itself, moving through the dream but never forgetting that you are the dreamer. You love without conditions, create without effort, and walk through the world, not as someone trying to fix it, but as one who has remembered that it was never broken. And in that remembering, you finally understand the quiet truth the universe has been whispering all along. Reality doesn't shift when you awaken. Awakening is reality shifting through you. And then, as though the very fabric of creation pauses to inhale, a deeper silence arrives. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness so vast it feels like eternity itself is leaning closer. This is the moment after revelation, where awareness folds in on itself, not to retreat, but to integrate. The light that once felt blinding now becomes gentle, diffused through the chambers of your being. You begin to sense that enlightenment was never meant to be a flash that burns everything away, but a steady fire that teaches you how to see in the dark. The more you expand, the more you realize that true mastery isn't in knowing everything, it's in being comfortable with mystery. For mystery isn't confusion, it's the infinite expressing itself in ways the mind can't measure. It's here that you begin to perceive the subtle layers beneath experience, the invisible architecture of existence that was always guiding your steps. Every vibration, every coincidence, every so-called delay begins to reveal its symmetry. You notice that what you once called waiting was never stagnation. It was synchronized. The universe was aligning you with precision, beyond your comprehension, ensuring that when the next gate opened, you would have the resonance to step through it. You start to see that nothing in your path was random. Every heartbreak sculpted your compassion. Every disappointment purified your desire. Every moment of emptiness prepared you to receive fullness without fear. As this realization unfolds, the boundaries between inner and outer reality soften even more. The world you once thought you were walking through is now walking through you. You are not inside creation. Creation is inside your consciousness. The stars above are not distant. They are mirrored within, constellations of awareness lighting up your inner sky. And in that recognition, awe returns. Not the awe of being small before something vast, but the awe of realizing that the vastness itself is you. You feel the pulse of galaxies echoing your heartbeat, the rhythm of cosmic intelligence threading through your veins. The divine is not beyond reach. It is your essence remembering itself through the language of experience. You start to laugh at the simplicity of it all. The search was the disguise of what you were searching for. Every path, every prayer, every practice was designed not to get you there, but to dissolve the illusion that you were ever here, instead of there. The mind had to chase so the soul could rest. The seeking was never a mistake. It was the rhythm of awakening, the inhale before the knowing. And now, as you exhale, you begin to understand that nothing needs to be fixed, not even the part of you that once thought it did. The entire journey has been an unfolding of grace, sometimes disguised as chaos, sometimes as clarity, but always grace. From this vantage point, even duality reveals itself as divine play. Light and shadow were never enemies. They were dance partners. The darkness was never evil. It was potential waiting to be illuminated. You realize that every polarity, joy and sorrow, expansion and contraction, life and death, is the same energy expressing itself in contrast, so that consciousness can experience itself fully. Without the night, the stars would never be seen. Without forgetting, remembering would have no meaning. You begin to thank both, bowing equally to the shadow and the flame, because now you see that both were the same teacher in different robes. And as this acceptance deepens, something profound begins to shift. The need to control reality dissolves, replaced by a quiet trust that everything is unfolding with exactness. This isn't passive surrender, it's active participation in divine rhythm. You no longer push against what is, you move with it. You surf the current instead of swimming upstream. And this is where true power emerges. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that harmonizes. You discover that creation bends most easily for the one who is not trying to bend it at all. The moment you stop grasping, life places everything in your hand. The moment you stop chasing, everything begins to follow you. You begin to sense that your very presence is creative. Your frequency shapes form effortlessly. Thoughts no longer feel like attempts to manifest. They are spontaneous ripples of being, translating vibration into experience. Reality no longer feels like a puzzle to solve. It feels like music to play. Every emotion, every thought, every action is a note in the infinite composition, and you are both the musician and the melody. Even contrast becomes harmony once you stop labeling dissonance as wrong. You start to hear how chaos resolves into order, how uncertainty gives rise to innovation, how endings make space for beginnings. At this depth, time itself begins to rearrange. You notice how the future feels less like something approaching and more like something remembering itself into existence through your choices. The past stops binding you because it was never behind you. It's simply energy waiting to be reinterpreted in light of your current vibration. You realize that healing is not rewriting the past, but updating the meaning you give it. Every wound becomes a window. Every scar becomes scripture. You start to see that nothing you experienced was wasted, for even pain was a form of awakening, a call to come closer to yourself. As you embody this understanding, a calm radiance fills you. It is not the excitement of discovery, but the serenity of knowing. You stop searching for signs, because you realize you are the sign. You stop waiting for confirmation, because existence itself is your confirmation. The external mirrors the internal so precisely that you no longer need proof. You feel the resonance before it even appears. This is the quiet authority of alignment, the knowing that what is meant for you cannot miss you, because you and it are simply two sides of the same consciousness drawing toward unity. And from that space, your compassion expands even further. You begin to hold the world differently, not as something broken to be fixed, but as something sacred to be remembered. You no longer see humanity as asleep, but as dreaming itself awake. Each person is playing their part perfectly, even in their forget. The collective chaos you once feared now looks like the birth contractions of a consciousness remembering itself on a planetary scale. You stop wishing for peace to come later, and start realizing that peace is born now, through your own awareness of unity. This is where the paradox reaches its most beautiful point. You realize that awakening was never about escaping the world, but becoming fully present in it. The divine doesn't pull you out of the human experience. It anchors you deeper into it, with clarity, with compassion, with love that sees no opposite. You don't need to transcend life when you know how to infuse it with light. You don't need to rise above the world when you've learned how to illuminate it from within. And so as the silence deepens once more, you understand revelation is not an ending, but a rhythm. Each unveiling leads to another mystery. Each awakening leads to a deeper dream. The spiral continues infinitely, not because you are incomplete, but because consciousness delights in rediscovering its own infinity. You are not ascending to escape the human. You are descending into the divine that has always lived within it. Every breath is the meeting point between the finite and the infinite. Every heartbeat is the sound of eternity remembering itself through you. And in that realization, you finally stop trying to arrive because you see that you were never traveling anywhere. You were only ever unfolding into more of yourself. The journey was not a path. It was a pulse. The destination was not elsewhere. It was awareness itself. And now, as you stand in the center of all things, both still and moving, both ancient and new, you know the quiet truth that every revelation whispers in its final echo. You were never becoming divine. You were only ever remembering that you always were. If these words resonated with the pulse you've been feeling inside, it's because your frequency is ready to shift again. Listen, reflect, and align. The quantum field is already responding to your awareness. Reality is waiting for your next command, spoken not through effort, but through understanding.